Good afternoon. Thank you all for rejoining us, I hope. If you're joining us for the first time, you have missed some fantastic sessions this morning, a masterclass among masterclasses from Ben Bolgar and an inspiring community design event. Thank you so much to Robert Jenrick, who we are delighted is joining us for our conference this afternoon. It's just become the afternoon a few seconds ago. Thank you, Robert. Now, those of you who have been paying attention will have spotted that this conference is about place. This Parliament, more than any other recent predecessor, is also about place. Certainly we think that. The general election was, if nothing else, a demand to fix Britain's deep geographical disparities in economic opportunity and social fabric. Since March, obviously, the threat of the pandemic has shaken our long-standing belief in the agglomerating powers of cities, the efficiency of gardeners' flats and the wisdom of a commuting economy. Bruce Katz from the States talking yesterday was particularly thought-provoking, scary at times on this. The government have fixed their sights on two of the most contentious and potentially transformative areas of policy, planning reform and devolution. Is this an elision of policy or is it a tension? This is one of the big questions facing the government and the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, which of course Robert Jenrick leads. Now, the child, wrote William Wordsworth, the child is the father of the man. I often ask myself where people were brought up. Robert Jenrick, I learned from Wikipedia, so I hope this is correct, was partly brought up near one of England's most beautiful towns. Certainly John Betjeman felt it was, Ludlow in Shropshire, which is in Old English means the place on a hill by the loud waters, which seems to me a very lyrical name for such a lovely town. Ever since Robert Jenrick became Secretary of State last year, he's had a consistently sharp and admirably clear focus, not just on the ineluctable need for more housing, but also that the places and homes we create should be popular and attractive, linked to the evidence on happiness and well-being, not just because that makes it easier to secure consent, but also because it is the right thing to do. Politics is surely quality as well as quantity. So we are particularly delighted that Robert Jenrick has agreed to join us today to talk about planning reform, regeneration, housing, heritage and placemaking. Secretary of State, thank you, welcome, and over to you.
Well, thank you, Nicholas, very much for the invite to join you this afternoon. And I'm delighted to say a few words now and then answer as many questions as I can. In an extended essay written over 150 years ago, John Ruskin wrote, "When we build, let us think that we build forever. Let it not be for present use alone. Let it be such work as our descendants will thank us for." And his powerful words, rooted in the belief that beauty underpins and shapes the values of a community, were written in support of the then Gothic revival. But I think they are as true today as they were back then. Ruskin considered the hallmark of beautiful design to be what he described as instinctive admiration. The idea that when you see something beautiful, you immediately know it. And that's something that I've believed my whole life, from growing up, as Nicholas kindly said in his introduction, near the beautiful town of Ludlow, to other places that I've been to and lived in and have shaped my life. Earlier this month, I visited Nansledden in Cornwall, the poster community for our new planning reforms, the front page of the Planning for the Future document. And for those of you who haven't had the chance to visit, it's an extension to Newquay on Duchy of Cornwall land that embodies the principles of architecture championed throughout my lifetime by the Prince of Wales. And walking through Nansledden, I saw colourful homes built with Cornish character and materials, a community that's walkable, that's green, and which people appear to really like to live in. And just this week, I was walking through Coal Drops Yard in King's Cross, a very different but equally beautiful and well-designed community, a transformed set of Victorian warehouses which connects the gabled roofs of two coal drops to create something that's elegant and self-evidently beautiful. A 52-column steel structure threaded with the fabric of 19th century buildings, a new space in which people can gather, melding the local history and heritage with the needs of a modern city, and one which we all hope will be full and vibrant once again in the near future. And it reminded me of the line written by the late Sir Roger Scruton that styles may change, details may come and go, but the broad demands of aesthetic judgment are permanent. Sir Roger knew that planning for the future was about building on the hard-earned wisdom and rich cultural heritage of the generations that have come before us, and identifying the design traits that define local character and identity. But I think much-loved communities like Nansleden and indeed King's Cross have been built not because of or thanks to our current planning system, but despite it. And I hope that we're going to change that. I'm sad that Sir Roger is no longer with us, but I think he would be pleased to see the profound changes that we're proposing to transform the way in which we build, many of which have been inspired by his life's work and the Building Better, Building Beautiful Commission, of which he was the inspiration and the co-chair. This government, I believe, doesn't just want to build houses. We want to build a society that has re-established powerful links between identity and place, between our unmatchable architectural heritage and the future, between community and purpose. It's because of him and other great pioneers, like our host today, Nicholas Boys-Smith, that we're at last having a national conversation about what matters to the public. Building homes that are beautiful, in keeping with the heritage and character of local neighbourhoods, and which stand the test of time. The document that we published at the beginning of the summer, Planning for the Future, sets out our belief, the belief of the Prime Minister and I, that the planning system is broken. It doesn't deliver beautiful homes, and importantly, it doesn't deliver nearly enough homes. Local building plans were supposed to help councils and their residents to deliver more homes in their area. Yet they take on average 7 years to agree in the form of lengthy and absurdly complex documents. And the accompanying policies are only understandable to the lawyers who feast upon every word. Under the current system, it takes an average of 5 years for a standard housing development to go through the planning system before a spade is even put in the ground. 7 years to make a plan, 5 years to get permission to build a substantial development, and slow delivery of all the vital infrastructure, social infrastructure, physical and digital infrastructure, upon which those communities, new or existing, depend. That's why the Prime Minister has been clear that we need an ambitious response that matches the scale of the challenge in front of us, meeting our target, our manifesto commitment as a government to build 300,000 homes per year. We're now consulting on how to deliver these homes in the fairest and most sensible way. These are a once-in-a-generation set of reforms that lays the foundations for a better future. We owe it to the next generation to radically reform the existing system so that we can offer them a future where our children and our grandchildren can afford to own a home of their own. We were making good progress before the pandemic. Last year, we built more homes than at any time in the last 30 years, taking the total delivered since 2010 to 1.5 million. The proportion of young homeowners was increasing after declining for more than a decade. But there's only so much that we can do without fundamental reform. Since 1970, France has built 16.7 million new homes. The UK has built 8.9 million. Last year, we built fewer homes per person than Poland and Belarus. One reason, not the only reason, but one reason for that is that we have an antiquated planning system. the product of a post-war settlement now long out of date, and that's holding back our enormous potential as a country. A system that makes planning authorities judge every single development on a case-by-case basis, as inconsistent a process as it is slow. At the heart of this challenge sits a simple fact. We need more homes. Homes that our planning system has, for decades, failed to deliver. Maintaining the status quo is simply not an option. We need a system that can help us meet the future with confidence and certainty. And so we propose a clear and transparent set of regulations, one that is faster and more consistent and easier to navigate, a system that moves us from blueprints in a council basement to interactive maps at everyone's fingertips. A system that draws on the views of communities, that genuinely tries to engage far more people, not just the 1% who have the esoteric knowledge to navigate the arcane and protracted world of planning processes. It's about smarter, more intelligent regulation for a more rational, predictable, and popular system. It's about building the homes our country desperately needs by unlocking more land and new opportunities, bridging the generational divide, and recreating an ownership society. And about providing for younger and future generations who deserve the same opportunities as those who came before them, security, dignity, and a stake in society. This sense of generational duty and obligation is what defines and guides our proposals. Our current plan-making process is not just complex, wasting time and money, it's also opaque. Nothing better illustrates this than the current model of developer contributions. Negotiations between councils and developers, where big developers have greater firepower to get what they want, cannot be relied on to provide what we really need. The current system unfairly advantages bigger builders who are able to muscle smaller builders, entrepreneurs, and construction companies out of the market. This is bad for house building. It's bad for small builders. It's bad for enterprise, and it's bad for Britain. 30 years ago, smaller builders accounted for 40% of new built homes. Today, it's just 12%. That's the lowest of any country in Europe, and we want to change that. Our new national infrastructure levy will simplify the system of developer contributions by setting a set rate, making it more streamlined and transparent, departing from the constant negotiations and renegotiations that render our current system so inefficient and unpopular. And by raising more revenue, by taking a greater share of the land value uplift than our current system does, it promises to support the vital infrastructure that we need to not simply build more houses, but to create better communities. So we're breaking the stranglehold of the big hitters in the market by reducing those barriers to entry, because small builders don't just hold the key to developing more homes, they also hold innovation, ideas. They're more rooted in communities and more likely to build places that are beautiful and popular. It's no coincidence that self-build and modular construction techniques have struggled to gain a foothold in the current system as well. The current system simply hasn't allowed it to happen. That's going to change. This timely reform will help small builders sit alongside the big players, driving the creation of jobs and growth to power our economic recovery as well. Not only will we be simplifying the system and helping SMEs, but we will also be helping communities to ensure that the places that are built suit their tastes and needs. While the current system excludes residents who don't have the time or the knowledge and expertise to contribute to the lengthy and archaic planning process, helping only the vested interests, the lawyers, the consultants, and those who feast off it. We will ensure that local democracy and accountability will actually be enhanced, not least by technology and transparency. Today, only 1% of local residents engage in the creation of their local plan, an even smaller number in our more deprived communities. So we're moving away from notices on lampposts and documents in filing cabinets to an interactive and accessible map-based online system, placing planning literally at the fingerprints of local people to be viewed and engaged with on your smartphone. The planning process will be brought into the 21st century with a massive effort to use digital technology to transform the way it works. Communities will be reconnected to a planning process that is supposed to serve them, with residents more engaged than ever before about what happens in their local areas. We will not just be building more, but building better. But we'll also be building greener and more sustainably. Protected land in our new system will be just that. Our greenbelt, our areas of outstanding natural beauty and rich heritage will be protected as places, as views, as landscapes we cherish and want to pass on to the next generation, as we set out clearly in our manifesto. We're protecting our green spaces and we're also enhancing them. We're building more environmentally friendly homes that will not just be there for today, but will be there for tomorrow and won't need to be expensively retrofitted in the future. Homes with green spaces, with new parks at close hand, and where tree-lined streets are provided for as a matter of law. Our new sustainability test will apply to local plans to make sure that they're consistent with our rigorously sustainable goals. There'll be more building on brownfield land to stop unnecessary building on valued green spaces. We'll be mandating net gain for biodiversity to leave our natural environment in a measurably better state than we found it. I appreciate the urgency of delivering a sustainable planning system with green foundations and just how important this is for our country's future. That's why we'll be strengthening the National Planning Policy Framework to better support climate change mitigation, why we're adopting a streamlined approach to assessing environmental impacts, and why we're bolstering our approach to energy efficiency standards through what I hope will be our world-leading commitment to meeting our net zero ambitions. The UK is the first major country in the world to pass a net zero emissions target into law, and our future home standard will help us to meet this. Last year, we consulted on proposals as a first step towards net zero homes. From 2025, we expect new homes to produce 75 to 80% lower CO2 emissions compared to current levels. And if we can go further and faster, we will. These homes will be zero carbon ready, and the ability to become fully zero carbon homes over time as the electricity grid decarbonizes and allows that to happen. It represents real action to protect our environment and to tackle climate change. I want us to build beautifully while preserving our heritage and our natural environment. And thanks to many of you, we have a clear plan as to how we intend to do that. I really welcomed the 45 propositions made by the Building Better, Building Beautiful Commission earlier this year. Many of these recommendations have been reflected in our white paper, and beauty is a golden thread that runs through it. One of these is the concept of design codes and pattern books. We can point to examples around the world of successful design codes, but some of the best examples are here in the UK. This is the idea that helped to build some of the country's most beautiful and livable and enduring places, like Bath, like Belgravia, like Bourneville. And I don't want beauty to be the preserve of the privileged few who can afford, by good fortune, to live in these places. Too often in the past, less affluent residents have not just failed to access these places, but have been the guinea pigs of experimental architecture, some of which has failed disastrously. I think of the demolished tower blocks of Glasgow's Red Road or Robin Hood Gardens here in London. Many of those post-war buildings, the commercial buildings in our market towns and cities, now lie empty, the victims of the changes we're witnessing on our high street as the move online necessitates as great a reimagining of these places as the motor car did. But I want us to do so more successfully than our predecessors did in those places. We want to rebuild those communities, to level up and regenerate our towns and cities as places that are rooted in what people really love. Vernacular styles that speak to the culture, the character, the heritage, and the identity of those places. Most people want to live in places whose form and character they choose, and we want to ensure that can happen. That means rethinking our entire planning system from first principles. The community sets the terms. They get to decide what gets built and what doesn't, and where new developments are in line with the new local design codes. We will be bringing forward our fast track for beauty. It's a fundamental transformation of the way we deliver homes. Just as home ownership offers people a stake in society, popular consent offers people a stake in their communities. For me, the key change here is the point at which residents can get involved. We want it to be from the very start. Inputting at the stage of preparing plans and design codes gives them real influence over both the location and the design. It's about giving them the chance to proactively participate rather than reacting, rather than being negative, carping from the sidelines, giving people the ability to be in the driving seat from the beginning of the journey. And we'll be setting up a new design body to support the work of communities and local authorities, helping them to translate the visions of their communities into local design codes that could be created at local authority level, at neighborhood level, even at street level in all parts of this country, beginning now. I'm absolutely delighted that Nicholas Boy-Smith will be taking this important work forward, chairing our steering group, and I very much look forward to working with him. I can't think of anybody better suited to be doing this work, anyone who's done more to contribute to this agenda or who believes in it more passionately. The group will be taking a very hard look at what is needed to empower communities to demand better design locally and across the whole country. He brings vast experience to this area, already working with many communities to set local design standards, and of course supporting the work that led to the white paper, as well as fantastically co-chairing the Building Better, Building Beautiful Commission. In the words of Sir Roger, good things are easily destroyed, but not easily created. Our changes will avoid a repeat of the ill-fated programme of demolition and destruction pursued by governments of the past that resulted in thousands of well-built pre-1919 terrace houses being needlessly destroyed. Today, developers are slowly rediscovering the value in the renovation and refurbishment of Victorian terraces and historic buildings, like the Welsh streets of Liverpool, streets that were under serious and needless threat of being knocked down. Today, they are part of a new wave of regeneration and renewal. And the Building Better, Building Beautiful Commission's report underlines just how important our heritage assets can be to local communities. We've asked councils across England to draw up lists of buildings of cultural and historic value so we can empower local people to nominate heritage assets which are important to them, that reflect their local area and identity and values and deserve to be protected. And I'm pleased to say that Charles O'Brien the renowned architectural historian and commissioner at Historic England, has accepted the newly created role of heritage advisor to spearhead this work. Supported by a team of modern-day monuments men and women, Charles will help English counties to identify more buildings which need to be protected. I'm pleased I can call on the expertise of Nicholas and Charles and many others as we work to take our ambitious plans forward over the weeks and months to come. Equally, I'm looking forward to hearing the views of many others, including some of those listening to this call today, colleagues and councillors of all stripes. We are conscious of the difficulties and the complexities. There are no quick or easy remedies for the long-standing ills that we're setting out to tackle. But nevertheless, please don't doubt our resolve or our determination to respond to the supreme national need to build more homes in all parts of the country and to build beautiful, well-designed homes as well. This is, as my predecessor, Harold Macmillan, said to Cabinet when he began the task of building the homes that the country needed in the 1950s and 60s, a new and inspiring adventure. I recognise the importance of getting this right, of listening to the opinions of everyone who genuinely wishes to engage constructively and shares our desire to build those homes and to build them well. People who share our vision for a planning system that awakens and unbinds our country's potential whilst championing beauty and sustainability, a system that, as Ruskin would have said, our descendants will thank us for in years to come. Thank you very much indeed for your time today. Look forward to answering your questions. Nicholas.
Thank you very much indeed, Secretary of State, and thank you very much for your kind words. I look forward to rolling these things up. Thank you above all for making a speech to a television camera, or indeed to a computer, which is never the easiest thing to do. So thank you. A wide-ranging and important speech there. We've had a cornucopia of questions come in. I will do my best to group and capture them, but apologies in advance to those listening if I don't quite get to all of them. Let me pull out one first, which you touched on several times, but I would just like to sort of pull out because I think it's so important. Talking about creating homes where the demand is and where solving the generational inequality of people being unable to now afford their home, which was possible a generation ago. There's clearly a tension there, I think an unavoidable tension perhaps, between one of the government's other agendas, which we were talking about a lot in the conference yesterday, of levelling up, where, as measured economically, there's less demand. And you were obviously talking about heritage and refinding the value of place and the energy embedded in existing buildings. How do we square some of those tensions? I realise there's no easy answer, but how are you and how are your colleagues in government thinking about some of those tensions, Robert?
Well, I think there's two tensions that you're referring to. One is the apparent contradiction between building more and building good quality homes and places that protect the environment and the things that we love and care about this country. I don't think we have any choice but to embrace and try to resolve that. The alternative is not to build the homes that the next generation needs, and that's not something that I'm willing to tolerate. So we're setting out to try to marry those two seemingly incompatible objectives. Part of that is this very, very strong emphasis on quality and design, the role of design guides and codes and all the work that I hope you will do, Nicholas, with us through the design body and what that may one day become, which is placing design and beauty on a stronger footing within the planning system as the environment or other things that we've done rightly in the past, putting a real primacy on that. I think that we can marry these two things, and that is exactly what we're setting out to do. The second contradiction is between the world, if you like, as it is today, where is the demand, where do people want to live today, and the world as we would like it to be, which is one in which we've successfully leveled up, rebalanced the economy, and enabled people to live and thrive in all parts of the country. And that's a contradiction and a challenge at the heart of, for example, the local housing need and consultation that we're currently in the final stages of. And I'm very conscious of that. I think the truth is that we need to be building homes in all parts of the country. Nowhere can be set in Aspic. I know I've heard people come to me saying, well, let's just freeze Kensington and build in Leicester or Liverpool. Everybody, I think, has to bear a degree of responsibility for building more homes. And so we will need to ask all communities to build more. But we do want to get the right balance so that we're also trying to shift investment over the medium to longer term into those places that have been without it or seen too little of it in the past. And that's something that we're trying to work on. What is a credible plan to deliver that, so that we do see more homes being built in our cities and in the Midlands and the North as well. And I hope in the next iteration of our housing methodology, you'll see that more vividly than we have in the past.
Thank you. I mean, I think not quite there yet. So that is a difficult tension to resolve. One question that's come up quite a lot, sometimes nicely, sometimes less nicely, has been the role of big house builders. It's unarguably the fact that we have a very concentrated market. Would you see that? Well, what is the consequence of the white paper? Do you think that will become less concentrated? And if so, will that be a sudden change, or do you think that will be generational? Perhaps just keep it quick, because we've got a huge number of other questions that have come in.
Well, I don't think we would have succeeded with our reforms if we were sat here in 10 or 20 years' time and the market was as concentrated as it is today. And I think if we don't take action now, there is every chance that the market will become even more concentrated. Our volume house builders have strong balance sheets, are looking to consolidate their position in the market. So the need for action is clear. And I hope that the things that we're putting forward in the white paper will create a more diverse and competitive market than the one we see today. That's certainly one of the key missions that we've set ourselves.
Thank you. I think it's a very important answer, actually. Another question that's come up, just come up again, it's come up several times, and it's something that we touched on in the B4C report, is the capacity of local councils. And obviously there has been a reduction in expenditure in relative terms over the last 6-7 years, perhaps a bit more than that. Do you think they'll be able to cope with these changes? How will they manage to learn some of the new skills that will be required? Because you can't just turn off the old system in a hat either. What's the government thinking about that, and how are they planning for that?
I think it will be very challenging, and I don't mean that to denigrate people who work in the planning system. I think that it's just a truth that many local authorities have now had to reduce the capacity, and we need to ensure they're better resourced, and that we're refocusing planning departments and planning professionals on the things that I think drove them into the profession in the first place. Planning began as an idealistic profession and has now, I think, become bogged down in bureaucracy. And I want to reimagine the profession as what I think it was a few generations ago. And the planning reforms that we're bringing forward, particularly the emphasis on simplicity, master planning, on design codes, on a plan-making process that truly engages and inspires local people. Those objectives feel like the things that drove most planners into the profession in the first place. And I would imagine they would much rather be devoting their time to than some of the things they do today. Also, freeing up time will enable them to focus once again on proper enforcement, ensuring that environmental standards are actually met, ensuring that heritage is actually protected, ensuring that the design codes are actually enforced, things which mean that we actually deliver on our objectives. And so I hope that this could be a defining moment for the profession in which it can move from paperwork and bureaucracy to a return to the idealistic vision of planning as it began earlier in the 20th century.
But you do concede that it'll be a challenge to do that, to get from where we are now to where we want to be and where the planning community wants to be.
It will be a huge change. It will require further resources and support from my department. And if you look at each of the major changes to the planning system, including under the Attlee government in the 1940s, pieces of legislation alone didn't transform the planning system. In fact, I think the 1947 Act took about 20 years to be enforced. And every time governments have gone for major planning reforms, they've either taken similar periods or indeed not been fully implemented at all. So this will only succeed if we can work together on a massive cultural change within the whole industry. And that is what I hope we can set out to do. And we certainly in MHCLG are approaching this in the most constructive way possible in seeking to listen to people's views and move forward together.
Thank you. I'm just talking of planning, and the questions are coming in thick and fast. The ones that came in while the Secretary of State was speaking, I'm afraid will get better handled than the ones that are coming in now, so I apologise. You also touched on neighbourhood planning. One of the startling statistics you mentioned in your speech was that only 1% of people get involved with the creation of a local plan. I'm surprised it's even that high, actually. I didn't know that stat, so thank you. I'll make use of that in future. You touched on neighbourhood planning. There have been several questions on neighbourhood planning. Clearly, with the change and quite importantly, altered role of local plans. I wonder if I could just tempt you to say a little bit about the role of neighbourhood plans in the future. And lots of people involved in neighbourhood planning are attending this conference. I think it's of interest to quite a lot of our watchers. That's the word. Spectators. That's the word. Audience. That's the word I'm looking for. Thank you.
Well, I want to raise the importance of neighbourhood planning, not diminish it, to give neighbourhood plans more teeth and more breadth. And I think we can do that in a number of ways. Firstly, because the plan-making process itself will be faster and simpler and more engaging. There'll be more use of digital technology, which I think will make it easier to engage a larger, more broader group of people within local communities. Secondly, because of the emphasis on design codes, and I don't see those as simply being at local authority level. I think they could be done in a meaningful way at a neighbourhood level as well. They should be done at that level because nowhere is uniform. We want to see individual communities be able to make choices about the look and the feel of the homes that are going to come forward. And then I think lastly, one of the great frustrations is the effort that people have put into neighbourhood plans and indeed plan making more generally, only to see it not fully respected and implemented, particularly through speculative development. And one of the I think the great benefits of the system that we're proposing is that if a local area has produced a plan under this system, and bear in mind these plans are updated every 5 years, it would be the end of the 5-year land supply issue, and it would be the end of speculative development. So if you wanted to bring forward an application in an area that had not been allocated for development, then, of course, the local council and community could choose to take that forward. We're not going to prevent those decisions, but they would be entirely decisions for the local community to take. And you would have to make a very strong and compelling and persuasive argument to your neighbours and local councillors. There would be no sense in which you could appeal to the planning inspector and get that development through. And so I think in large swathes of England, particularly in the greater southeast, that would be a huge step forward, where local communities would genuinely be choosing where they want development and where they do not want development, and that would then be meaningful and binding for the lifetime of the plan.
Thank you. I hope everyone's paying attention because there's some very important answers coming through here in terms of diversification of the sector, capacity for local government, and the increasing ongoing role of neighbourhood planning and of the 5-year land supply. Certainly, that was an issue that came up many, many times in the consultation we did last year. So some of the people we spoke to would have, I think, been very happy with that answer. We're nearly out of time. I'm just going to put in a plea. You don't need to answer the Secretary of State, but we've had people making a plea for the role of archaeology in the new local plan, for ancient woodlands, for veteran trees, and for non-veteran trees. I think I got that right. I don't need to respond to that, but just to make the plea to your face. 2 other issues that have come up a lot. You won't be able to answer them fully. We've only got a minute or so left. Obviously, tenure. Role of non-market housing. You've talked about the ownership challenge, and another issue that has come up consistently has been where homes go and the consequent sustainability and lifestyle that we lead in terms of our car use and level of greenness of our individual lives. Can I just ask you to comment very briefly on those 2 issues, and then I promise we will let you get back to the rest of your day and indeed release our audience in a few moments.
Yeah, thanks, Nicholas. Well, on tenure, we want to build more homes of all types and tenures in all parts of the country. And affordable homes are clearly particularly important. The infrastructure levy seeks to raise more money, so not entirely to the benefit of landowners and developers, but more money, a fairer share And that will give more funding for affordable housing. And so my expectation under this system is that there will be more money available for affordable housing in local communities. And we're also committed to ensuring that those places can continue to be mixed communities as well. We don't want to see the ghettoization of new housing, something that's has been rightly fought against in recent years. We want to see communities in which there's a good mix of housing and a good mix of tenures. In terms of the point around where you distribute housing, as I say, I think everywhere is going to have to bear some additional house building if we want to see us meeting the kind of targets we've set ourselves as a country. But we've got to be building communities that are sustainable. I don't want to see communities that are entirely reliant on cars, where there are no jobs locally. And I desperately want to see greater homes being built in existing urban communities and reimagining and reawakening of some of our core cities. And that is at the heart of the broader levelling up agenda of the government. So more investment in those places will absolutely be something that the government, not just within the planning system, but across all of our agenda, will be taking forward in the months and years to come.
Brilliant. Well, listen, thank you very much. We're now a minute over, so I've done a bad job as chair. We've overrun. I apologise to everyone. Lots of comments coming in literally in the last couple of minutes. A plea from the Better Up North session yesterday that local communities should be able to spend some of the money that comes to them, but that's what local communities always ask for, and there's always that tension there. Quite an important speech and some very important answers about the future of planning inspectorate, 5-year land supply, capacity for local government. So, Secretary of State, thank you very much for giving up your time. You quoted my much lamented and missed co-chair, Roger Scruton. Good things are easily destroyed, but not easily created. I hope that people of all political parties and all our audience can unite with the work that Create Streets and others do in the determination to create good and beautiful places and to steward and look after what we have well and perhaps better than we have over the last couple of generations. So I say to you and to everyone, thank you. The way you leave the session is by clicking the little red door at the bottom left of your screen. I've learned you have to say that bit, otherwise you're still on the screen. So don't say something embarrassing once I go away. You'll still be visible until you click that door. I'm sure you wouldn't. And thank you very much. Do please come back. It's lunch break now. Videos will be shown on the platform, but at 1:30 we will be having a session chaired by Kate Henderson, Chief Executive of the National Housing Federation, on towns or cities. Where should we be investing? So have a good lunch. Thank you, Secretary of State, and do tune back in. Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye now.